Great dialogue is like the snap of a finger. It magnifies your attention to a scene.
There are really more people in China with genius IQs than the entire
The Phoenix is
population.
the most diverse. The Fly Club, Roosevelt punched the pork.
Which one?
The Porcellian, the pork, it's the best of the best.
Which Roosevelt?
When dialogue is good, it can elevate the tension of a moment or help define a character. When it's bad, the audience might get bored.
Hey, what's your name?
Billy.
I'm Dice. Like Lucky Seven?
I know who you are.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I've heard a lot about you. Dice.
Well, listen, don't believe everything you hear.
So what is good dialogue? In this video, I'll be going over 4 scenes from movies that have deft verbal exchanges between 2 characters. While this won't be an exhaustive overview of all the elements required for good dialogue, and I'm not an expert, my hope is that by sharing a lesson that was given me, I can help you begin to think about one aspect that can make dialogue great. I once took a creative writing course with Canadian author Thomas King. In that class, he tried to impart many lessons to us about writing, but the one I remember the most was his lesson on dialogue. In his lesson, one of the things he talked about was how not to make dialogue a direct question and answer. While you can and will often need to do that from time to time, it should not be the first tool you reach for. Here's an example to help illustrate why.
Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
good, and you?
Not bad. Any plans this weekend?
Nothing special. What about you?
Boring, right? Professor King gave us an example of how to make it better.
How's it going?
You.
This dialogue is more compelling. Not only is the answer unexpected, but it establishes a conflict as well. After class, I was thinking about the lesson. I couldn't figure out how to apply his example to an entire story. It wasn't until I looked at one of his books that I understood better. Obviously, writing novels and writing screenplays are different things, but I'm just looking at one specific example here that looks at a small aspect of dialogue that you could apply to both mediums. Here's a heavily edited sample of dialogue from Thomas King's book, The Back of a Turtle. To set the scene, the novel's central character, Gabriel, has just tried to drown himself, but is now safe on shore, and a young woman, Mara, is trying to figure out why he tried to commit suicide.
Why do you want to kill yourself?
The dog leaned up against Mara's leg and began testing her ankle with his tongue,
Sold.
Gabriel said.
No licking.
Mara smiled,
His name is Sold?
The tag is corroded.
Gabriel said.
Sold is all you can make out.
So he's not yours?
He likes to follow me.
Are you alone?
Said Mara.
Is that the reason?
Everyone is alone.
Gabriel said.
Are you gonna try and kill yourself tomorrow?
Gabriel looked out across the sand, watched the water rise and fall as though the ocean were breathing.
If I were gonna kill myself,
Said Mara.
I'd do it when the sun was shining.
Notice how Gabriel never answers Mara's question about why he wants to kill himself. Think of how unimaginative it would be for Gabriel to answer, "I'm so lonely." Obscuring the reason and making a search for it is far more compelling. Another thing King does here is ensure there are a few direct questions and answers between the 2 characters. When Mara asks Gabriel if the dog is his, Gabriel doesn't say yes or no. He simply says the dog likes to follow him around. This tells us a little bit about Gabriel himself. If a dog is following you around and you're telling it what to do, proof of ownership or not, that's your dog. But Gabriel isn't even sure he wants to live, so the subtext of his answer is that he is unwilling or unable to take responsibility of anything. Also notice how each character's dialogue tells us how they think without being too overt. When Gabriel says everyone is alone, this is a hopeless remark. It implies nothing will get better. Mara, by contrast, says she'd kill herself while the sun is shining. This comment could have multiple meanings, but it implies that Mara's outlook is bright even if we're talking about suicide. The contrasting attitudes of the characters makes the scene inherently more interesting. And interesting dialogue that defines characters while engaging the viewer is what it's all about. Now that we've covered some basics, let's explore some examples from movies that have great dialogue. Aaron Sorkin is a master at indirect dialogue that is infused with purpose and subtext. In fact, I suspect I could have taken all my examples from movies he's written. In this scene from The Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg is in a deposition. He's being sued for taking someone's idea for a matchmaking website and turning it into the popular social media site Facebook. In the following scene, he is being questioned by the opposition's lawyer.
You sent my client 16 emails. In the first 15, you didn't raise any concerns.
Is that a question?
In the 16th email, you raised concerns about the site's functionality.
No.
Then why didn't you raise any of these concerns before?
It's raining.
I'm sorry?
It just started raining.
Mr. Zuckerberg, do I have your full attention?
No.
Do you think I deserve it?
What?
Do you think I deserve your full attention?
I am sure Thomas King approves of this dialogue. Look at all the places where Mark doesn't directly answer the lawyer.
You don't think I deserve your attention?
I think if your clients want to sit on my shoulders and call themselves tall, they have a right to give it a try, but there's no requirement that I enjoy sitting here listening to people lie.
This is amazing. Each misdirected answer Mark gives only further exemplifies how he's not paying attention. But it's not just that Mark isn't paying attention, he's angry and he feels superior. The indirect communication between Mark and the lawyer serves to build up the antagonism between the characters until Mark explodes. What is especially brilliant about this example is that a court case lends itself to direct question and answer type exchanges. But Sorkin manages to avoid that and elevate the text at the same time. Here's another example of good dialogue from Aaron Sorkin. The movie Steve Jobs is a series of fictionalized moments before three major product launches: the Mac, the Next Computer, and the iMac. In these moments before the launch, Steve Jobs has one-on-one interactions with the same set of people, allowing us to understand Jobs through these conversations as we progress through his career. In the following scene, he is meeting with Steve Wozniak before the Next Computer launch. For the context of the scene, you need to know that Wozniak is Jobs' oldest friend. They worked at Apple, and Wozniak helped Jobs develop the original Macintosh.
That's right. No, he said, the musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra.
You can't write code. You're not an engineer. You're not a designer. So how come 10 times in a day, I read Steve Jobs as a genius? What do you do?
I play the orchestra. And you're a good musician. You sit right there. You're the best in your row.
Yeah, do you know why I came here?
Can you just answer that?
I came here because you're gonna get killed. Your computer's gonna fail.
The scene is mostly dominated by Wozniak, but it still has all the elements of good dialogue. Wozniak asks Jobs,
Do you understand how condescending that just was?
A few moments later, as Wozniak gets more agitated, Jobs says,
You're gonna have a stroke, little buddy.
What did you do?
This line tells us that Jobs really has no idea how condescending his comment was, and clearly looks down on Wozniak.
Why has Lisa not heard of me?
When Wozniak asks Jobs why Lisa, Jobs' daughter, has never heard of him, he's asking why the daughter of one of his oldest friends and coworkers doesn't know who he is. But how does Jobs interpret it?
Man, how many fourth graders have heard of you?
This further solidifies not only that Jobs doesn't care whether or not Wozniak knows his daughter, but also that Jobs has an enormous ego.
You're gonna get killed. And I came here to stand next to you while that happens, because that's what friends do. That's what men do. I don't need your pass. I'm standing by you because that perfect cube, that does nothing, is about to be the single biggest failure in the history of personal computing.
Then, after a scathing review of Jobs as a man, a friend, and an entrepreneur, what does Jobs reply with?
Tell me something else I don't know.
This is unexpected. This makes us more interested in Jobs because people don't normally accept criticism easily, let alone a full-scale tirade. What makes Steve Jobs so confident in this situation? It leads us to the next part of the story while illuminating us on the fact that Jobs is aware of some of his foibles, even if he can't help them. The following scene from Young Adult is another perfect example of how to use subtext in dialogue. The movie is about Mavis Gary, a successful writer who returns to her hometown to try to steal back her old boyfriend at his first child's baby shower. In Mavis's mind, she's better than her former peers. She lives in the big city, has authored a series of books that were once successful, and she wears expensive designer clothes. This has given Mavis a hyper-inflated sense of self-worth.
Are you writing in there?
I'm the author. I'm just signing it.
You're Jane McMurray?
No. Jane McMurray just created the series. I wrote the book.
Do you know Jane McMurray?
Yes, I know her really well. I wrote the book.
Okay.
Do you want a signed copy for your store?
No, that's fine.
I can sign as many as you want. It adds value to your stock.
Yeah, but once merchandise is signed, we can't send it back to the publisher.
Why would you be sending it back to the publisher?
We're probably not going to sell them. The series is done.
This almost plays out like a comedy. Here we have someone who doesn't understand that they just aren't as important as they think they are.
Come on, I told you you can't write in the...
Ever, bookman.
Mavis thinks the books are on a big display because they are popular, but the clerk tells her that there are actually just too many of them.
They must be really popular.
Actually, we just got a lot of surplus stock we're trying to clear out.
But Mavis doesn't appear to be listening to him. As the conversation continues, the clerk seems totally uninterested in the fact that she's the author and only cares about the creator of the series, Jane McMurray.
Series. I wrote the book. Mavis Gary Crane. See?
Do you know Jane McMurray?
Each character's dialogue in the scene is singularly focused on their own agenda. Mavis is trying to spread her inflated ego, and the clerk is not so tactfully trying to explain to Mavis the reality of the situation. While there's a small degree of direct question and answer to the dialogue, one way in which more indirect dialogue can work is when it seems like people are having separate conversations, which is exactly what is happening in this scene. Nightcrawler is about an amoral guy, Louis Blue, who gets into the business of capturing and selling footage of gory accidents and murders to news stations. Lou is the kind of guy that will do or say anything to get what he wants. When we first meet him, he's stealing copper wire, wire fence, and manhole covers. The security guard questions Lou in the yard, and Lou tries to act lost until he realizes he can't fool the security guard and knocks the guard out. A lot of scenes from Nightcrawler have good dialogue because Lou often subverts his true intentions from those around him in order to get what he wants. In this sense, we get multiple layers of dialogue. We watch understanding that Lou is lying, we watch how people react to Lou's negotiation tactics, and we try to discern Lou's true goal in the conversation. The multiple layers of the conversation make these interactions more interesting. In the following scene, Lou has successfully sold his first footage to a news station, and he is interviewing Rick for an internship to help him grow his business.
Okay, the ad didn't say what the job was?
It's a fine opportunity for some lucky someone. What's your address, Richard?
I don't have one, right? Not a permanent one, I mean, right now.
You're homeless.
I was for a while.
You trick.
Worked the street? No.
Wasn't a question. Rick, do you have a driver's license?
Yeah.
Do you know Los Angeles?
Yeah, I grew up all around here.
Can you start tonight?
Doing what?
Notice how Lou doesn't respond to Rick's question about the nature of his job directly. He simply says it's
a fine opportunity for some lucky someone.
This sounds like a cheesy ad, and this tells us something about Lou. He doesn't know how to talk to people. It's like he recites things that he's read or heard in an attempt to be genuine. Lou's cheesy line also tells us Lou is hiding something from Rick. The part where Lou accuses Rick of being a prostitute is also indirect.
You trick.
Worked the street? No.
Wasn't a question.
I'm straight.
Plenty of straight guys trick. Do you have a driver's license?
Normally, an employer would be concerned that an interviewee was a prostitute, but we can see that by continuing the interview, Lou doesn't care. In fact, as the conversation goes on, the subtext is that Lou fully understands what Rick is and hopes to take advantage of him. Moving forward, this helps us understand the basis of their relationship.
Which is why I'm promoting you to Executive Vice President of Video News.
What am I now?
Good dialogue is a delicate art. It must reveal who the characters are without being obvious, avoid the boredom of following direct questions with direct answers.
But I am tired of being Ringo when I know I was John.
Everybody loves Ringo.
It's a challenging balancing act, but when you get it right, you can feel it work. Good dialogue sings.
How do you distinguish yourself in a population of people who all got 1,600 on their SATs?
I didn't know they take SATs in China.
They don't. I wasn't talking about China anymore. I was talking about me.
You've recognized it every time you've heard it, but hopefully now the mechanics of why it sings is a little more clear. Thanks for watching. What movies do you think have good dialogue like this? Or just in general? Please let us know in the comments below. And if this is your first time to the channel, please subscribe. There's a new video every month. And if you really liked it, hit that like button, because likes are my friends. I'm pretty lonely. Next month I look at imagery in Doctor Strange. If you haven't seen our Bloodsport versus the Billy Blanks movie Balance of Power, or our favorite movie scores, please check them out. Pretty please. See you in the next one.